8 ways AI can help you every day. Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for askleo.com. Unless you've been hiding under a rock, you've heard of things like Copilot, Gemini, Claude, and of course, ChatGPT. These tools use artificial intelligence, or some version thereof, to mimic or simulate human interaction. Since they've got access to such huge amounts of training data and often direct access to the internet, they can manifest some amazing abilities. Some of those abilities can be extremely useful even to the casual computer user like you and me. Now, throughout this video, I'm going to be using Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT, and Perplexity.ai for most of my examples. In all cases, these are things that the free versions of those tools will do for you. You don't necessarily have to set up an account, but in my experience, for whatever reason, the results are generally better if you do. It has an opportunity to learn a little bit more about you and the kind of responses that you're interested in. In my case, I may be signed into my paid versions, mostly because of the number of queries that I run every day. But the bottom line here is that whatever I'm doing in the paid version that I might be running is going to work roughly equally as well in the free versions that you're probably using. And like I said, I'm sticking primarily with Copilot, ChatGPT, and Perplexity, but much of what I'm talking about will actually work with the current crop of AI chatbots and agents, and there are so many of them. This is a very quickly evolving space. Things can and will change at any time, and actually I encourage you to experiment not only with the kinds of things you can do, but with the different AI agents out there that you might do them with. All right, with all that out of the way, let's start with something tangible. Summarizing. Honestly, I would guess that this is probably about 75% of how I use AI these days. I'll take something really long that I don't want to take the time to read and ask for a summary. I can then use that summary to make a decision as to whether or not I'm going to read the whole thing. Let me show you what I mean. So here we are looking at one of my articles. It's a recent article about networking, which of course is a complicated topic. The article itself, as I scroll through it, is actually relatively long. There's a lot of words. It feels kind of dense. It's a perfect opportunity for summarization. So I'm going to click on the Copilot icon here in the upper right of Edge. And then since it already offers to simply create a summary of the page, that's what I'm going to click on. Now you'll notice that it says here, summarize the main points on this page. That thing I clicked on was just a shortcut. You can, in this message Copilot box down at the bottom, type in exactly things like that in order to run the AI, in order to use the AI. But here we go. Here's a brief summary of the main points from the page. And it is a brief summary. It is just a few paragraphs, a bullet list, which is always kind of fun. And it is a great way to understand, okay, what's on this page? Is it worth investing more time to read the full article and get more of the nuanced details? Now, let's assume for a minute that you've got a really short attention span. I know I do. This response, which is a couple hundred words, is a bit long for a summary. So in this case, what I'm going to do is actually ask it to summarize in 50 words or fewer. As we scroll down, there is a one-paragraph summary of what this article is about. I will say that in my experience, and this varies from chatbot to chatbot, counting tends to be a problem. I have had summaries that are supposed to be 50 words or fewer come in anywhere in like the 40 to 60 range. It shoots for about 50, but don't expect exact word counts on this. Now, like I said, this is a fairly technical article, a fairly dense article. Normally what I would do in a case like this is I might ask Copilot to please rewrite that article for me. And I don't think a lot of people realize that this is something you can do. Unfortunately, you can't necessarily do it with Copilot. If I actually ask it to, I've asked, please rewrite this article with an 8th grade vocabulary, and that vocabulary item is going to become important here in a minute. But for Copilot, it says, I can't do that. I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that. Okay, fine. This is an opportunity for us to go elsewhere. I'm going to fire up ChatGPT. I'm going to go ahead and close the Copilot window so we have a little bit more real estate. This time what I'm going to do is actually take the text of the article, select it all, copy it to the clipboard, go over to ChatGPT and now ask it, please rewrite this article using an 8th grade vocabulary. And for our international folks, 8th grade is roughly like 12 to 13 years old. Paste in the entire text of the article, the whole thing, and hit enter. Now, ChatGPT is going to do exactly that. Here is a new version of this exact same article, this time written using a slightly different vocabulary. Now, let's say for a moment that 8th grade is still a bit of a stretch for some of the technology. I went ahead and actually asked it to rewrite the article with a 4th grade vocabulary. I'm not going to do that here, but you can see if you go to the companion article for this video, I have a link to the actual results. And indeed, it is the article rewritten at a 4th grade vocabulary level. Now, if you've ever heard of something called ELI 5 or something called Explain It Like I'm 5, this is a very common thing, I think, over on Reddit. There's even a group called that where people can ask their questions and ask for an explanation in very simple terms. Okay, let's do this again. Rewrite this article using vocabulary appropriate for a 5-year-old. Now, in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste the original article in place. You can ask it to work on what you've already given it. In this case, I'm actually not sure which article it would work on. Would it work on the original that I gave it to begin with? Or would it work on the version that it rewrote itself using that 8th grade vocabulary? I want to be clear. I want it to be this version of the article, my original version. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in again. And there it is, rewritten so that even a 5-year-old could understand. Now, the question is, of course, is that actually accurate? And I've got to say, no, it's not. There are some things here that I would expect a 5-year-old not to understand. Wi-Fi. Maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe the term Wi-Fi is something that a lot of 5-year-olds do get. But the point is that there are still some concepts or some technological terms that you can't necessarily dumb down. But I will say that this article now uses a significantly simpler vocabulary than my original. It may lose some nuance in the translation, but I pointed out because when you are faced with something that just feels incredibly dense or difficult to understand, copy-pasting the whole article into your favorite AI and asking it to rewrite it using a different vocabulary, targeted at a different age group or grade level, can often get you something that becomes significantly easier to understand. All right, now what? How about YouTube? I consider this really similar to the preceding point, but I want to call it out specifically because, again, it's another way that I use AI to summarize and save me a lot of time. I don't always have the patience to sit through a video to see if it's what I want. AI can help. Now, there are several services out there that can summarize YouTube videos. Crisp.io, Readwise Reader are a couple of that I use. But even without these tools, we can get AI to summarize our videos for free. So visit your favorite YouTube video. Here's one of mine, literally one of mine and one of my favorites. Let's take a look at the transcript. To do that these days, we have to click on More in the description, and then down at the bottom of the description, it says Show Transcript. We'll click on that and you'll see there's the transcript now on the right-hand side. I'm just going to click, hold, and select the entire transcript. Hit Control-C to copy it to the clipboard. I'm going to now go over to ChatGPT again. This time, I think I want to start a different discussion, a different chat. I don't want it to conflate the two topics that I've been dealing with. While ChatGPT will remember some things about me since I'm signed in here, it will draw less of an inference if you start a new conversation completely. So, please summarize this video transcript in 50 words or less. Now, notice that I'm explicitly calling out it as a video transcript. I don't know how much of a difference it makes, but I figure if it's easy to give ChatGPT a little bit more information about what it's working on, it has an opportunity to do a better job. I'm going to paste in the transcript, and you'll notice that I've left in the timestamps. ChatGPT, again, maybe because it knows it's a video transcript, it does the right thing. We'll hit enter, and there it is, a summary of that video. All right, so far so good. Now we know, okay, there's a paragraph. It tells us what the video is about. Maybe it gives us enough information that we don't need to watch the video. Maybe it gives us enough information to tell us that, yeah, that video is probably worth my time. What if you're not a video person? What if video just isn't your thing? Well, let's do something else with AI. Please turn this video into a full article with correct grammar and remove any verbal static. As you probably know, a video, talking on a video like I'm talking to you now, is very, very different than, say, reading an article or writing an article for that matter. I happen to riff off of the articles for many of the videos that I create, but it's very definitely not the same. These are much more spontaneous. There's verbal static. There's incomplete sentences. There's all sorts of messiness that comes with just talking. What if you'd rather read an article? Let's make an article out of the transcript. Paste it in, and there it is. Here is a full article based on the transcript of the video that we decided not to watch. And indeed, it's not a bad article. What I find interesting is once we get down to the bottom, it says, let me know if you want this turned into a downloadable PDF, formatted for blog publishing or rewritten in a different tone. You have so many different options, not just in how you want to get the rewrite, but what you want that rewrite to sound like. This would be an opportunity to say rewritten in a different tone. Great. Rewrite it using the vocabulary of a 5-year-old. You get the idea. There's a lot of flexibility here. A lot of whatever you can think of you might want, you can go ahead and ask for. All right. One of the things that AI turns out to be really, really good at least in my experience, is, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it understanding, even though it's not really understanding in the cognitive sense. But it's better at understanding what I would consider to be vague questions, or questions where terminology is way off the mark. It makes it a great place to just ask questions. For this one, I'm going to go over to Perplexity AI. We're going to ask Perplexity what I consider to be a very vague, made-up question. There was a character on a sci-fi TV show that lasted only one season but had a single movie sequel that was killed suddenly by getting impaled through the chest. Who was that, and what were the show and movie titles? Now, what's interesting here is that Perplexity, being a search-based AI first, is actually researching using various websites to get the answer that it thinks I've asked. And indeed, the character you're referring to is Wash from the sci-fi TV show Firefly and its movie sequel Serenity. That is exactly correct. And in fact, it should point out here that it's impaled through the chest by a reaver harpoon, which is not something that I said, some kind of impalement. But you get the idea. It actually did a fairly decent job of understanding what my question was all about and turning it into something that got me an answer. Now, in full disclosure, it can be wrong or it can be off the mark. depending on how vague your question really is, it can go off on different tangents. For example, the question that I asked here uses the phrase TV show. My original version did not say TV show, and it came up with a completely different answer. So it is important, as always with AI, to fact check the answers that you're getting. But in this case, since I knew the answer I was looking for, I could confirm that, this one is correct. It's worth playing with and seeing what kinds of things come back based on your horribly worded questions. What's neat about this is that very often you'll do what I actually ended up doing. When it's clear that the answer isn't the answer you were looking for, you'll iterate through your question. Your horribly worded question might be a little less horribly worded. In that same vein, another thought is to what I would consider translate badly worded questions. Now, this relates directly to what I do for a living, answering questions. Every once in a while, I get a question that I can most politely term as a missive, including paragraph after paragraph of backstory and details sprinkled throughout. Sometimes there's a question in there, but often there's not. The person asking is putting a lot of effort into giving me a lot of detail, thinking, of course, that they've expressed their needs. But if you actually read what they've written, there's no question. There is nothing that they have phrased as a question. Now, I don't have an example that I can feel comfortable sharing with you right now, but I can tell you that it happened this morning. It's not at all uncommon then for me to head over to ChatGPT and ask this question. What is this person trying to ask, and what are the relevant details? Followed by a copy-paste of the question that they've asked. ChatGPT is actually really good at sifting through their word salad and give me the answer to what I was looking for, which in this case is the question buried in there that I can then turn around and answer for this person. All right, number 6. Getting answers to tech questions. Yes, in theory, this could put me out of a job, but I'm not really worried about it just yet. AI is actually pretty good at answering tech questions. I've gone so far as to just copy-paste error message text and nothing else. No other context, no nothing. Pasting it into Perplexity and have it come back with a summary of what the error means and some suggestions as to what to do about it. One example. I'm about to ask Perplexity this question. We'll start a new thread here, and we will type in 0xC00000E. That's it. No question, no context, no nothing. It's doing a search, it's doing research, and it's giving me an answer. That's an error code. It recognizes it as an error code. It's something that comes up in certain situations in the Windows Boot Manager. Here's a list of common causes. Here are some things to check. Here are some additional notes. You get the idea. And even better with Perplexity, up at the top, these are the sources that it researched. And then down at the bottom, of course, are some follow-on questions that may relate. Now, let's say you want to do both, right? You can use AI chatbots to polish and clarify your communications with anyone. I'm going to start a new chat with ChatGPT, and we're going to ask it, make this question clearer, and paste in that original question that I had asked of Perplexity. So here's a rewrite of the question. It's about the same length, actually, and it's actually a reasonable reword of what I said. Let's make it more concise. There it is. Much simpler, much clearer, and much more to the point. It didn't try to correct me. It didn't try to answer me. It simply rewrote what I had given it. Another approach, of course, is to change the tone of what you want to write. For example, maybe somebody pissed you off. Maybe somebody didn't do something they were supposed to do. Well, we're going to ask ChatGPT to please write a polite but sternly worded short email asking someone for the TPS report that they have due. I've asked them repeatedly, and they've completely ignored me, and it's getting frustrating. Now, my tendency might be to go a little over the top, maybe sprinkle in a little light profanity, but that's not professional. That's why we say polite but sternly worded. There's a great place to start. There's an email that I could feel comfortable editing a little bit and sending on to get that message across. AI can be useful anytime you're trying to communicate complex ideas to someone else, or you just need help with tone or just about any other characteristic of your communication. Just make sure that the results say what you intended to say. All right, last one, number 8, ask annoying questions. When you're learning to understand something, it's not uncommon to have lots of questions. If you're dealing with a real person, they might get frustrated and impatient. AI does not get tired. It does not get impatient. It just sits there and answers. If you want to learn how to do something, start with a question. If you don't understand the answer, or you uncover something else that then has you puzzled, keep asking. In fact, that might be the key to all of this. Don't be afraid to ask AI questions, including questions about itself. I asked Perplexity, what else can you do? And got even more ideas. Here's a list, generated by Perplexity, of the things that it could do for me simply by my interacting with it. Now, we do have to talk briefly about which AI. Like I said, there are so many AI offerings right now that it can be really, really hard to know which one to use for what. For generalized chat, honestly, any of the most common ones will do. ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, Claude, and the others are, I'll just say, similar. You may find one more to your liking than the others based on how you use it. However, with all that being said, here's what I use the most. Now, I normally use Kaji.com for traditional search. In other words, if I've got a keyword or even an error code or something like that, I'll just probably throw that into Kaji. It's the default search engine for my browser. However, if what I'm thinking about is more like a half-formed question, Perplexity is where I go. Perplexity does a great job of inferring what I'm looking for from my question, clearly researching from several different websites, and then also providing those citations if I want to actually see where the answer came from. For article summaries and anything that involves transforming text, like rewrites or, like I said, summaries, ChatGPT, honestly, I keep coming back to it. It keeps giving me the best answers for my style. And I also use ChatGPT's new image generating feature, and I also use it as a gateway to access the original DALL-E 3. I keep trying other image generation AIs, but I keep coming back to one of those two. I have to throw out an honorable mention, if you will, for a service called Straico, S-T-R-A-I-C-O. It allows you to use multiple AIs at the same time. For example, when I create a summary for an article, I can run that same operation against ChatGPT and Claude simultaneously. I'll get results from both, and I'll pick the one I like the most. Straico has access to dozens of different AIs, and it's a great tool to use if you want to experiment with understanding their differences and which one might be appropriate for you. As I said earlier, I've got paid plans for almost all of these, but almost all of these have free tiers that at worst you might have to sign up for a free account, but you can certainly experiment at the free level. Bottom line here is give AI a try. You may find that it's not only simple, just ask questions, but useful. AI can help make you better informed and more productive. As with all AI-generated information, have a healthy dose of skepticism ready, but honestly, you need that no matter where you're getting your information these days. For comments, for updates, for links related to this topic and more, visit askleo.com/179862. You'll find more examples and the results of some of the questions that I asked the AIs at that link as well. I'm Leo Notenboom, and this is askleo.com. Thanks for watching.